Welcome to Devotional Drops, where we explore the richness of Scripture and how it speaks to our lives today. In this episode, we're reflecting on unconditional love. You know what's fascinating? There's a single sentence that's been translated into over 1,500 languages and has shaped civilizations for centuries. And today, we're diving into why John 3:16 might be the most influential 16 words ever written.
That's such an interesting way to look at it. You know what strikes me most? While billions can recite it, I wonder how many truly grasp its revolutionary message.
Well, here's something most people don't realize. In the original Greek text, when it says world, it uses the word cosmos. We're not just talking about Earth or humanity, we're talking about the entire universe.
Hmm. So you're saying this love encompasses everything from quantum particles to galactic clusters?
Exactly. And here's what's even more mind blowing. Studies show that when people truly internalize this concept of unconditional love, it actually changes their brain chemistry. Research from Harvard Medical School shows increased activity in the prefrontal cortex, the area associated with empathy and compassion.
That's fascinating. So there's actually a neurological component to this spiritual concept?
Right, and it gets better. You know how the text says he gave? That active component is crucial. Studies in positive psychology show that people who practice active love, making conscious decisions to show kindness, report 60% higher levels of life satisfaction.
Well, that reminds me of something I witnessed at a reconciliation project in Rwanda. Former enemies choosing to love despite their history. It transformed entire communities.
That's exactly the kind of transformation we're talking about. And here's what's interesting about the Greek word for belief used here, pisteuo. It's not just mental agreement. It's more like, well, imagine studying parachute specifications versus actually jumping from a plane.
Oh, wow. That's quite a vivid way to put it. So it's really about action over intellectual understanding?
Precisely. And you know what's fascinating? Neuroscience backs this up too. When we make decisions to act in loving ways, even before we feel like it, our brains actually start producing oxytocin, the bonding hormone.
That's incredible. So the science is actually catching up to what this ancient text has been saying all along?
Yeah, and it goes even deeper. Recent studies in conflict resolution show that when one party takes the initiative to show unconditional love, like we see modeled in this verse, it reduces conflict escalation by nearly 70%.
So this isn't just about personal transformation. It has real-world applications for everything from international relations to community building?
Exactly. Look at the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in South Africa. They based their entire approach on this principle of unconditional love and forgiveness. The results were revolutionary.
Well, that brings up an interesting point about the relationship between love and forgiveness. They're connected but not exactly the same thing, right?
Here's what's fascinating about that. Psychological research shows that while forgiveness can happen in an instant, love is more like a muscle that needs consistent exercise. Studies show it takes about 66 days to form new neural pathways for loving behaviors.
That really challenges our instant gratification culture, doesn't it?
It does, and you know what's interesting? Social scientists have found that communities that embrace this kind of unconditional love show 40% higher rates of volunteer work, 35% more charitable giving, and significantly lower crime rates.
Those are some pretty compelling statistics. How do they measure something as intangible as unconditional love?
Well, they look at behavioral markers, things like forgiveness rates, community service hours, conflict resolution success. And here's what's really interesting. These effects are measurable regardless of religious belief. It's about the principle in action.
That's quite profound when you think about it. These 16 words have literally shaped human behavior across cultures and centuries.
And maybe that's the most fascinating part. Whether you approach it from a spiritual, scientific, or sociological perspective, the principle holds true. Unconditional love transforms both the giver and receiver. It's like a universal law we're only beginning to fully understand.